We're looking at the first in our new series, The Fruit of the Spirit, and we're thinking about this amazing list of qualities that we find in our God. I'm just going to read through them with you there. Love. No, I'm not actually. It's a test, isn't it? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, self-control, generosity, I think was one of those that I can remember. We're thinking about this amazing list that we've been thinking, particularly last week as we thought about my sweet pea and the idea that God's love grows in us. We're asking the question, does God have anything to do with any of those things? Does God have anything to do with that? This week we are looking at the subject of love, that thing that the Beatles talked about that said that could change the whole world, that deep connection that one person has with another person rather. Love, this subject matter that encapsulates us. Does God have anything to do with love? And if he doesn't, and if that's your take on my talk, or that's your take on life, then you can just crack on, live your life, figure the rest of it out. But, think about this. If God does have something to do with this idea of love, then it changes everything. So my argument, my preach today, my talk today is going to present this idea that yes, God does have something to do with love. And it changes everything. And we're going to look at a real moment in time in the text. So I wonder if you just read along with me. It's in John chapter 13. It's a real significant moment and I would say in the story of love in our universe. It's a high point. We'll come back to it, but just read through it with me and see what this text has to say to us about love. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave the world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. This is the Last Supper. This is the account of that. It's in all the Gospels as we make our way through and we build into this moment, the passion of the Christ. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. It's always Simon Peter, isn't it? In these moments, it's so often it's him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" And Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I'm going to do, but later you will understand." I don't know what tone Peter used here with his no. I imagine he was quite adamant. "No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you've got no part with me." "Then, Lord," Simon Peter replied, "not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." Jesus answered, "Those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean, and you're clean, though not all of you." He knew who was going to betray him, and that's why he said, not everyone was clean. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I have done for you?" he asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord. Rightly so, that's what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly, I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them." On the way to the cross, this is the Passion account at the end of all the Gospels. Jesus is on his way to the cross, and he gives the disciples, and I would argue us watching on years down the line, a moment of ultimate love. The word in Greek is this word teleos, this idea it's translated there in verse 1, up till the end. He's going to love them up till the end. And there's a sense in which we'll get to see how much love he's got if he keeps the course and he goes to the cross and he loves them. But the word means so much more than that. The word's got this idea of the pinnacle of love. This moment from here on, I think it's just such a high point. It's just such a picture of the best love we're ever going to see in the world. That's what God's word tells us in this moment. This is the greatest bit of love than you can ever see. Now, there's a context to the foot washing episode that you've got to understand. It's party season. It's the Passover. Everybody's got their focus on that. It seems like even when you read through what the disciples are saying, even though they've got a sense of what's going on, maybe a little bit, they've got this focus on the Passover. All the families come together in Jerusalem and they're having a great big party. And there's that sort of joyousness going on. But into that joyousness, see what the next couple of lines said. In John's gospel, he repeats this phrase over and over again about the hour of Jesus. You might remember these accounts where Jesus will say, "My hour has not yet come." And he's talking about his death. It's known from his birth, and it hangs over him all of his life. And in this moment, Jesus says, this is his hour has come. This is what he's faced with. I don't know if you've ever spoken to anybody when they know that their hour has come. There's such a focus, isn't there? There's such an immediacy of that concern. And yet, in this moment, where is Jesus at? Not only that, as the text progresses, he knows that these disciples, who've been with him pretty faithfully so far, they've just had a big argument about who's the greatest, and they're all going to leg it. Just capture this moment, if you can, for a second. If ever there's a moment to be selfish, if ever there's a moment to think about yourself, for anybody on the planet, it's now. And yet, where is Jesus? This is outrageous love. This is just incomprehensible love. He grabs the basin. He takes off his outer garment. And he takes the role. Traditionally, the lowest servant would be the person that would go and wash the feet. This is the moment where Jesus' hour is upon him. He knows, and it's not going to be a pleasant hour. It's going to be a brutal death. And he knows this is coming, and it's been hanging over him his whole life. And yet his heart gives out. It's just mind-blowing to his disciples round about him. And he says to himself, I'm going to wash their feet. And he makes his way around, and he washes their feet. The word that's used for this, we don't need to know too much Greek, but it's this word of agape, this idea of love that just goes out, just flows out towards other people. He puts other people's needs. This is what the love is. It's just a crazy love moment. He puts other people's needs above his own. In the moment, it's pretty caring. Just to have somebody wash your feet is a pretty caring, it's a pretty lovely thing to do. But he is thinking beyond his own demise, and he is thinking into the future for them. And he's trying to give them an example. He's trying to care for them into the future. Such amazing love. Up to this point, there were known loves. The Greeks would write about these known loves. You go and study them if you want. I know you're all keen to go away and assess what I'm saying. The known loves were all reciprocal loves. This idea of eros, which we've come to think about as being just purely a sexual thing as we think about everything in this day and age. It was this idea of two people coming together and being one. There's this idea of philia, this idea that people come together and help each other out. There's the idea of storge, which is family. And these are all the common reference points for love up to this point. This is how we understand love. And this is often how we think about love. A lot of this is our love language. It's how we understand love. Jesus, in this moment, totally reshapes the love language. There's a philosophy, psychologist guy I follow called John Vervaeke. He's not a Christian, but he loves to study how we've come to think about everything. And he says you can look back to this point, to the birth of Christianity, and you can actually see a change historically in how we view love. There is a spike of love. There is a change of love. The early church is born out of love. He says you can actually look and see it happen. Our understanding of love is blown apart. Jesus changes us in such a way that he changes the way that we think about love. It's a selfless love. It's not a tit-for-tat love. It's not a you scratch my back kind of love. It's not we've got shared mutual interest kind of love. It's just, I love you. Look around at our world. Think about your own set of circumstances right now. Tell me that this is not the love that you need. This is the love that you need. If you're on the search for love, there'll be all sorts of contributing factors to your journey to find somebody that you love. You might fancy somebody. You might have shared interests with somebody. You might have things that you've got in common. Let me tell you, if you find somebody who just looks at you and just loves you for being you, stick with them. Stick with them. That is the kind of love that you want. If you've reached a point in a relationship where you know that your partner loves you in that way, cherish that relationship. Nobody wants a 20th wedding anniversary card that says, I really appreciate the way that you organize the house. I love how organized you are. I like, nobody wants that benign chat in a 20th wedding anniversary card. All that they want is for somebody who says, I just love you. That is the love that we want, and that is the love that the world needs. And here's the good news. And it's kind of the good news, and it's the news that just should unsettle us and make us think about how we're living all of our lives. This is the love that Christians have. We are loved in that same way. Think about what Jesus does. The disciples are all going to leg it. They're not worth his time. They're going to run off. And yet ahead of time, he gives them a lesson they're going to remember forever, and he loves them, just outwardly loves them. The love that we have as Christians, there's maybe a verse that you might be familiar with. While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Like, we just reel it off, but think about what that actually means. We probably won't think about our faith tomorrow. We might. We've probably dismissed the idea of God for huge parts of our life. Most of our world does that. And yet, while we're in that state of just completely forgetting about God, God says, I am going to demonstrate the hugest amount of love that you can ever see. This is our position. Though we wander off, though we won't think about him tomorrow, though we'll have our ups and downs with faith, he demonstrates his love for us. This is our story. This is the story that we're wrapped up in. This is the love that we know. It's not eros. It's not philia. It's not you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. It's not it's nice to have things in common. The love that the Christian has, that the believer has, that they get wrapped up in, their story that's theirs to tell or theirs to be part of, is that we are just outrageously loved. As I was thinking about this week, and tell me if I've got this wrong, I think I've got it right. Great love is great, but it's exhausting, isn't it? Is it easy to love somebody? Like to really love somebody? Might be quite easy to do the mutual love thing. Sometimes that's easy, although that's sometimes hard work, isn't it? Just being in a relationship's hard work. That you've got to work at that. But actual, real love, letting people into your life, people that'll suck you dry of emotion, people that'll take advantage. You see where Jesus is, the path that he's leading us down? We have these people in our lives, don't we? Sometimes that's just our family. It can be exhausting to live this life of love. What is Jesus doing here? What is he asking of us? Is he really asking this of us? And do we just kind of, up to this point in the talk, do we go, I just need to dismiss that because that's just not a realistic aim? I think one of the things that we know is as we look around the world and we see everything, or we look even into our own hearts, is we know that we need this. We know that this is the kind of love that we need. We look around at the fractious world that we live in. We look around at our own family circumstances, all that, and we say, we need this love, but it's just too hard. The rest of the text, I think, just gives us a couple of things that we need to know. It's not how to do it, it's just, you need to know this about love. You need to know this about love. So read with me or check out the text verses 6 through to 9. I'll just read them out really quick. It's the Simon Peter bit. He comes to Simon Peter, who says to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? He's basically saying, you don't have to do this. You don't have to do this for me. Jesus replied, you don't, and this is what we're going to think about. What is he getting at here? You don't realize now what I'm going to do. Later you'll understand. And Peter's like adamant, no, I can't receive this from you. You can't love me like this. And Jesus says to him, unless I wash you, you've got no part with me. And then he says, okay, I'm all in. What are the lessons that the disciples are learning here? What is being taught in this moment? What are we supposed to get from this bit? What are we supposed to glean from this pretty awkward point in the conversation? Where Peter's like, no, I don't need you to wash me. I think we see two things, really. Selfless love is the way that we've got to go. But Jesus is impressing upon Peter, and we can think about this as we think about whether we're able to do this selfless love, is we can't do it. You see that? How is Peter supposed to react to that? Jesus is saying to Peter, you need to let me wash you. You can't have mutual love with me. You've not got it in you. You need to just receive the love. How are we supposed to take that news? What are we supposed to do in this environment where we see God's love? How are we supposed to receive that? I think real love can only be learnt as we see where Peter is in the debt of it. We're called to this amazing love, and so often we've got to put our hands up. And yet in putting our hands up, there is something awesome to be learnt, I think. I can remember really clearly when I was about 13, the first time that I went to see my dad's work, where my dad worked, where he had to work. It's a mill. It's a dusty, horrible mill. And I remember going there and thinking, and I did end up going there a little bit later on, but I remember getting there when I was 13 and thinking, I could never go here. I could never do this. I just not got it in me. But I saw in my dad somebody who had to go. And it didn't make me feel like competing with him. What it led to was me having a 13-year-old lad, penny dropped for me. This guy does this for me. I can't go there. I'm never going to be able to go there, perhaps. And yet what I realized was how much love was there. It was a new offshoot of love. I was like, I don't want to go. I don't need him to spend more time with me. We don't have to have conversations. It doesn't have to go like that. I just have this increasing softer love for this guy. There's no repayment that I can offer to him. There's just a bigger love. When we look around at our world and we see how much we need the selfless love, when we know how much we need it, we know that we're not going to get there, and yet that we see that is on offer, that we see that somebody can, that Jesus does, even in the knowing that we can't do it, even in the knowing the limits of our love grows. You see that? That's the first thing. We can't do it. We can't do unconditional love, and yet because Jesus does, and because we need it so much, even that grows our love. Second thing that I think we see, verse 12 through to 17, is that the disciples were, and we are, privy to the most dynamic love that there has ever been. These disciples who are going to err and stray, and whose love will fail ultimately, they won't be able to stay with Jesus, have their teacher, their hero, their Lord, if you can believe this, God himself, come down and wash their feet. This is a lesson like no other. This is the best lesson that can ever be taught on love. This is the moment of love. Here's my reflections. I think even the smallest experience of selfless love that we can have can massively change things. Even a tiny experience of selfless love, if it's dished out. If we help somebody across the road, let's say, somebody can be helped across the road, and their experience of that love And I've had this kind of thing happen to me a few times when somebody just gently loved you out of nowhere. You've not deserved it. Somebody's just given you a little encouragement, a little act of kindness, and it can completely restore your faith in humanity. Have you had one of those moments? Are you thinking, I could do with one of those moments? Somebody just acts. They're not going to get anything back from the moment, but just love is just gently expressed, a kind action. And it's the dynamic of love, the equation. If love was math, the equation of love is just explosive, isn't it? It's not 1 + 1 = 2 with love. If it's genuine and if it's from the heart, it's 1 + 1 can equal 10, 20, 30, 40. Love is like that. There is a chain reaction with genuine love. And Jesus is drawing his disciples to that point. He says, you've experienced love to blow you away here. You have got hold of something that can change the whole world. If you want to change a workplace tomorrow morning, maybe you've got a partner that you could send a text to or a relative you know. Just send them a text on their way to work that says, I just love you. And they won't only be the person who receives the benefits of that. You ever got a text like that on your way to work from anybody? Somebody that's just thinking about you. Somebody that just puts that love, that just gives that love into your life. You walk into work and you've got a smile for somebody, you've got a bit of extra verve, you're even a little bit better at your job. It just escalates. Love is like that. I'll be honest, most times when I watch the news of an evening, and I'm one of them, I just put the news on at 10 o'clock, I'm that guy. And mostly I'm like, oh man, I think we're done for. But we're not. Love has got outrageous properties. And Jesus invests in these disciples right at the start, and he says, you are privy to something. Jesus' acts of love is not just helping somebody across the street. It's not just a text. It's the fact that God condescends to come down to where we are, forget all of his glory, even though we're washouts, and he still says, I'm going to wash your feet. If you are somebody who has come to faith, then your feet have been washed by God. Not only your feet have been washed by God, you've been washed by the blood of the Lamb. The power, the love that is, as we've thought about over the last couple of weeks, just seed growing in you is just outrageous to change the world. The power of love. In verse 17, Jesus says that if you do these things, you'll be blessed. He's saying, if you absorb these teachings, just, the 11 or 12 of you, or you do these teachings, then your families will be blessed to live in a world of love. It will escalate. Your communities can realize a world of love. The world can see real love. Here's what we need to know about love. Agape love, selfless love that comes from God. First thing is we need to know is that we can't. Second thing that we need to know is that we can't do anything else. That's where we're at. We live in a world right now that cries out for love. And we have a God on our horizon who cries out, I have got the love for you. That is the tension that we live in. What does God have to do with love? I would say that God has everything to do with love. I'm going to leave you with one verse as we finish, just to wrap up. It's in 1 Peter 22. We've been thinking about this idea of the fruits of the Spirit. I don't want us to be ignorant of this as we go through. There's this idea as we think about God that this is, for those who believe, is at work in us. And Peter, as he gets to being an older man, he doesn't forget the lessons of love that Jesus taught him. It's really lovely to read, particularly Peter and John's letters as they get into older men. They've seen this love. I'm sure they could write loads of theology, and part of their letters are theology, but they can't stop talking about love. Everybody that they write to, as they get older, they say to these younger people about the faith, you need to know about the love. so often that they start with the love. 1 Peter 22 says, now that you've purified yourselves by obeying the truth, so that you've sincere love for one another. This is the call to people reading it and to us. Love one another deeply from the heart, because you've been born again, not of perishable seed, but of imperishable, through the living and enduring Word of God.